Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov is a broke student with a dangerous idea, that great people shouldn't have to follow the rules. He looked at great men like Napoleon, men who didn't become great by being good, they did it by breaking the rules, ignoring morals, and stepping over anyone in their way. And then they were celebrated for it. But then Raskolnikov makes a fatal mistake. He convinces himself that he is one of those great men, that he is above morality. So he decides to prove it. In his test, murdering an old pawnbroker, a cruel, greedy woman that he thinks the world is better off without. But the moment the axe falls, everything changes. His theory completely shatters, and so does his own mind. The genius of Crime and Punishment is that Dostoevsky shows us how common thoughts and beliefs that we can all easily have or relate to can actually lead us to something as horrific as a murder. That our corruption doesn't necessarily begin from the outside world, but it comes from the seduction of the thoughts and ideas that are common in our own minds. Flow by Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. What if I told you the secret to happiness isn't money, isn't success, isn't even love, it's getting so absorbed in something that you forget you exist? Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, dare you to say that 3 times fast, spent decades researching peak human experience. He interviewed thousands of people, artists, athletes, surgeons, assembly line workers, about their happiest, most profound moments. And the pattern he found changed psychology forever. Flow is the state where you're so immersed in an activity that everything else seems to disappear. Time warps, self-consciousness vanishes. You become one with what you're doing. Athletes call it the zone. Musicians call it the pocket. Gamers call it just one more level, man, just one more. But here's the scientific breakthrough. Flow has specific triggers. They're clear goals, immediate feedback, and a challenge that perfectly matches your skill level. Too easy? Boredom. Too hard? Anxiety. But that sweet spot? Pure flow, baby. The mind-blowing part is that people in flow report the highest levels of happiness and life satisfaction. Not people on vacation, not lottery winners, people completely absorbed in challenging activities. The struggle itself is the reward. And even crazier, you can architect flow into your life. You can structure work to create clear challenges. You can design hobbies that stretch your abilities. Turn mundane tasks into games with goals and feedback. Csikszentmihalyi discovered something profound. Happiness isn't something you pursue, it's something that happens when you're too busy doing something else to notice. The best moments in life are not passive or easy. They're when you're stretched to your limits, accomplishing something worthwhile. Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. Every piece of art begins as a mess, a complete shit show. If starting something new feels like a disaster to you, well, congrats. Author Anne Lamott would tell you that you're doing it right. In Bird by Bird, Lamott technically wrote a book about writing, but really it's a survival guide for doing hard things without losing your mind. One of the big ideas from the book is SFDs, aka shitty first drafts. By the way, folks, I'm a master at shitty first drafts, let me tell you. Lamott says that they are a feature and not a flaw of the creative process. Take my own book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, for example. I had to rewrite that book top to bottom 3 times before I even showed it to an editor. So whether you're drafting a book or learning a new language, that awkwardness you feel when you start doesn't mean you're fucking up. It only means that you're expecting too much of yourself too soon. Instead of resisting the mess, Lamott would say to embrace it. Give yourself a little bit of grace and learn to enjoy the messiness, and something beautiful and clean will eventually shine through. The Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt. What if I told you that a 2,500-year-old Buddhist monk knows more about happiness than modern psychologists? Jonathan Haidt spent years researching this exact issue, and holy shit if the ancients weren't onto something. The Happiness Hypothesis is basically what happens when you take ancient wisdom from the Buddha, Confucius, Plato, and the Stoics, and then run it through the gauntlet of modern scientific research. And guess what survives? Almost fucking everything. Take the Buddhist claim that attachment causes suffering. Modern psychology confirms that. People who cling too tightly to outcomes report lower life satisfaction. Or consider the Stoic practice of negative visualization. Turns out, imagining a loss actually increases gratitude and happiness in the present moment. But here's Haidt's genius move. He doesn't just validate ancient wisdom, he updates it. He uses this killer metaphor of the mind as a rider on an elephant. The rider is your rational mind, making plans, setting goals. The elephant is your emotional mind, powerful, intuitive, and ultimately in charge. Ancient wisdom knew you had to train the elephant, but modern psychology shows us how. Through meditation, cognitive therapy, and even medication when necessary, it's not about controlling the elephant, it's about becoming a better rider. The Stranger by Albert Camus. Would you be willing to die for being honest about who you are? That's a question at the heart of The Stranger by Albert Camus. It's the story of Marsault, a man who refuses to lie about his feelings even when his life depends on it, and even despite the fact that he kind of doesn't have them. When his mother dies, Marsault doesn't cry. He doesn't even pretend to care. He goes to the funeral, sits quietly, and goes home. Days later, he's swimming, laughing, and having sex, like nothing ever happened. But one day, he does something insane. He shoots a man. Marsault is then put on trial, but not for the murder. Well, not really, actually. They seem to care more about the fact that he didn't cry at his mom's funeral. A subtle point that Camus was trying to get across in the book is that life has no inherent meaning. We're all just pretending it does, but if you refuse to play along with that pretend game, if you refuse to fake it along with society, society will punish you for it. In this sense, Marsault's crime wasn't murder. It was honesty. He didn't lie about who he was, and for that, they called him a monster. So if you've ever felt out of place in a world obsessed with fake smiles and forced emotions, The Stranger might remind you that you're not alone, and that if life doesn't make sense to you, you still have to live within it. The Evolving Self by Robert Keegan. Forget everything you think you knew about growing up. Robert Keegan's Evolving Self isn't about becoming more mature, it's about literally evolving the operating system of your mind. Here's a revolutionary idea. Human development doesn't stop at adulthood. Your mind keeps evolving through distinct stages, each one a complete transformation in how you make sense of the world. In stage 1, you're basically an impulse with legs, pure immediate gratification. Stage 2, you discover that other people have minds too. Oh my God, revolutionary. Now you can manipulate people and negotiate with them. Stage 3, you become who others need you to be. Your identity becomes your relationships and the roles you play in society. Stage 4, plot twist. You develop your own internal compass. You author your own values and identity. And stage 5 is the final boss level. You realize that even your self-authored identity is just another arbitrary construction, and you can hold multiple perspectives simultaneously without losing your shit. But here's the kicker. Most adults get stuck at stages 2 or 3. They spend their entire lives being who their family, culture, or society tells them they should be. They never develop their own voice. And even crazier, each transition is fucking terrifying. It's an existential crisis with socks on. I don't even know what that means. Because you're not just changing your mind, you're changing the thing that changes your mind. It's like performing surgery on your own brain while you're still using it. Keegan maps out these transitions with surgical precision. The confusion, the resistance, the breakthrough moments. Once you see the patterns, you can't unsee it. So start recognizing where you are, where you're stuck, and what the evolution looks like. 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. If you make it to 80, your entire life will fit into only 4,000 weeks. That's the uncomfortable truth that Oliver Burkeman tackles in his book by the same name. He argues that real productivity isn't about maximizing. It's not about doing more and getting everything done all the time. It's about confronting how little time we actually have in our lives. Most productivity advice gets it backwards. It tells us to master our time management as if getting things done is a problem that we can solve permanently. Well, it's not. Burkeman shares how he used to delay meaningful work like writing because he felt he needed to clear the decks first. He'd answer emails, run errands, knock out other small tasks that felt productive, but his important work would rarely ever get done. Burkeman eventually realized that he wasn't lazy. Like all of us, he was just avoiding the discomfort of doing something important, and trying to conquer it only made things worse. This book reminds us that we don't need to do more to live a meaningful life. We just need to make peace with what we won't ever have a chance to do, while staying focused on the things that actually matter. The Pathless Path by Paul Millard. What if the life you're living isn't really yours, but rather what you think success is supposed to be? In his book, The Pathless Path, Paul Millard argues that most people are living a script that they never consciously chose. Millard experienced this himself, making a fuck ton of money in a consulting career that gave him prestige on paper, but an empty soul deep inside. Then a 2-year battle with Lyme disease forced him to ask if any of it even mattered. Now, before his health crisis, Millard says he was on the default path. This usually involved chasing titles, paychecks, and approval, only to realize that none of it really made him feel alive. The pathless path is the opposite. It's a life built around curiosity, experimentation, and intention. To start his own pathless path, Paul blew up his old life practically overnight. But he points out that you don't have to do that yourself. You can start with small creative projects or freelance on the side to see what sticks. Through it all, the central lesson rings true. Embracing uncertainty is the price of living a life that's actually yours. The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. Life is difficult. That's the opening line of this book, and honestly, that's kind of the whole book. But Scott Peck doesn't stop there. He explains why this simple truth is the key to everything. The Road Less Traveled starts with a mindfuck. The moment that you accept life is difficult, it stops being so difficult. Why? Because you stop wasting energy bitching about how hard everything is and you actually start dealing with it. Peck was a psychiatrist who noticed something profound. Most psychological problems come from avoiding legitimate suffering, not the suffering itself. So we drink, we drug, we distract, we delude ourselves to dodge the natural pain of growth. But this avoidance creates way more suffering than just facing the original problem. He breaks down 4 tools to dealing with life's difficulties: delaying gratification, accepting responsibility, dedicating yourself to truth, and balance. Simple concepts, but revolutionary when actually applied. Definitely worth your time. The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Gallwey. What if I told you performing better at something you care about isn't about trying harder, but sometimes about trying less? That's the core concept behind The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Gallwey. On the surface, it's a book about tennis, but the lessons apply to every awkward first date you've ever botched, or each job interview you've tanked, or every time you've tried to act smooth and just made things weirder. Gallwey says that we've all got 2 selves inside our heads. Self 1 is your anxious, micromanaging, freaking out over every move brain. Self 2, on the other hand, is calm, competent, and just waiting for Self 1 to shut the fuck up so it can do its thing. The trick to mastering your inner game isn't more effort. That's Self number 1. It's learning to get out of your own way and trust Self 2 to handle things. Because trying too hard leads to overthinking, and overthinking will kill the flow. So instead of beating yourself up about how much you suck at something, start by picturing what better looks like. Then let Self 2 handle the rest. Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows. Your life is falling apart and you don't know why. Your relationships follow the same toxic patterns. Your finances keep imploding. Your habits don't stick. What if I told you the problem isn't you? It's that you don't understand the systems that you live in. Donella Meadows' thinking in systems is like getting X-ray vision for the world. Suddenly you see the hidden structures that control everything, from your body to your family to the entire global economy. A system is just a bunch of things connected in a way that produces a pattern of behavior over time. Your body's a system, your workplace is a system, your relationships are systems. And here's the kicker: systems produce their own behavior, regardless of who's in them. Ever notice how every job has that one toxic person? Plot twist, it might not be the person, it might be the system creating the role. Change the system, change the behavior. Meadows teaches you to see the leverage points, places where small change creates massive results. Most people push on the wrong levers. They focus on surface level shit like replacing people or changing the rules. But the real power is changing the goals of the system or the paradigm that it operates in. For example, let's say you keep dating assholes. You could blame yourself, you could blame them, or maybe you could examine the system. What patterns attract you to unavailable people? What feedback loops are keeping you stuck? What beliefs about love are creating the system in the first place? Once you see the systems, you can't unsee them. Master systems thinking and you literally hack reality. Now, warning, this book will ruin you for simple explanations pretty much forever. You're welcome. So there you have it. 22 books. But if that still doesn't satisfy you, if you're still not satiated, if you want more knowledge, then this video has 33 more for you. You sick freak. Go check it out.